at 6.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Sitting in tonight, Forrest Sawyer.
Good evening. In South Africa, white voters have overwhelmingly chosen to give up their monopoly control of power. 69% of them approved the government's plan to abolish apartheid, that system of laws that have enforced white dominance. It was also an endorsement of President F.W. de Klerk, who began the reform process and staked his political future on the outcome of this vote. Mark Litke is in Johannesburg.
It was President de Klerk's birthday today, and South Africa shared his present, an overwhelming vote to continue reforms.
Today, we have closed the book on apartheid, and that chapter is finally closed.
It was a greater margin of victory than anyone had expected. A majority of voters seemed to recognize the risk of civil war and economic chaos if they tried to stop the reform process.
The white electorate has risen above itself in this referendum.
But in the black township of Soweto, reaction was subdued. Those who have suffered most under apartheid were relieved, but still suspicious of white promises.
Apartheid is still very much alive. Above all, I still cannot vote in my own country.
Nelson Mandela did thank whites who had the courage to vote yes. Now he says it's time for the reform process to be accelerated. Black and white officials have already started negotiations over a new constitution. Mandela wants blacks included in an interim government this year. Blacks have become increasingly impatient with the pace of reforms. Even today, thousands demonstrated to protest their continued exclusion from power. Conservative whites, meanwhile, lashed out at the yes vote, threatening to fight rather than accept a black government.
I'm not going to any negotiation table where I'll have to beg the freedom of my people from Mr. Mandela or anyone else.
It is the continuing possibility of extremist violence that threatens to mar today's victory. From the right wing, if the country moves toward majority rule too fast. From impoverished, angry blacks, if the pace of reform is too slow. Mark Litke, ABC News, Johannesburg.
The tightrope walk to democracy in South Africa is made even more dangerous by the fact that 1 million whites have vowed never to share power with the nation's 30 million blacks. President de Klerk's reforms have already left the poorest of them worse off and angry. Don Kladstrup has that story.
Never, in her wildest imagination, did Pat Millingham dream that this is what she'd be doing for a living.
Although I've always done my own work, but I never expected to work in somebody else's home.
As a maid, a job whites always considered beneath them, something only blacks did. But Millingham, a former nurse, says no other jobs were available. Hendrik Lutz, an unemployed construction worker, can't find work either and has had to make his home in a cemetery.
Well, we sleep on the gravestones.
Hendrik Begevaart, an unemployed carpenter, is so poor, he has to live in a black squatter camp.
You struggle for money, you struggle for food, you struggle for everything that you want.
It wasn't supposed to be that way. Not for whites. For more than 40 years, the South African government protected whites by reserving the best jobs for them, while confining blacks to menial work. Now, with the repeal of laws which kept the races apart, many whites at the lower end of the economic ladder are in trouble.
The black people is taking all the jobs.
The number of jobless whites has more than doubled in the last year, to 50,000. Every month, hundreds of whites make a pilgrimage to this relief office near Pretoria to collect food rations and old clothes.
It's embarrassing, but they've got to do it. If you don't do it, your kids are not going to eat.
That is something blacks in this country have worried about